The Battle of Bergen, also called the Battle of Bergen-Binnen, was fought on the 19th of September 1799, and resulted in a French-Dutch victory under General Brune and General Daendels against the Russians and British under the Duke of York, who had landed in North Holland. The battlefield is marked by the Russisch Monument. Order of battle. The Duke of York landed on the 15th of September, and assumed the command of the army, which now amounted to about 30,000 men with 1,200 light cavalry. At this period the Allies possessed a superiority of force with which it was decided to strike a decisive blow as early as possible. The Dutch, numbering 12,000, were in a strong position around Langdijk, somewhat in advance of the French, who, by drawing in all detachments, had raised the field strength to 10,000 men, who were positioned in Alkmaar, Bergen, Skull, and Egmond-Daenz. On the 19th of September the forces, under the Duke of York, formed in 4 columns, moved forward from Shaftesbury. The left column, commanded by Sir Ralph Abercrombie, consisted of 2 squadrons 18th Light Dragoons, Major General the Earl of Chatham's 7th Brigade, Major General Sir John Moore's 4th Brigade, Major General the Earl of Cavan's 6th Brigade, Colonel MacDonald's Reserve, 1st Battalion of Combined Grenadier Companies, 1st Battalion of Combined Light Companies, 53rd and 55th Foot. The right column, commanded by Lieutenant General Johann Hermann von Fersen, consisted of 2 squadrons 7th Light Dragoons. Russian forces. Advance Guard, General Suldov, St. Petersburg Grenadier Regiment 1st Division, General Jerepsov 1st Brigade, Colonel Count Fersen Musketeer Regiment 2nd Brigade, Colonel Dubiansky 2nd Division, General Lieutenant Ivan Essen 1st Brigade, General Major Sedmoratsky Combined Grenadiers 2nd Brigade, General Major Eldar Banov Combined Grenadiers 3rd Division, General Major Emma Combined Grenadiers, Artillery Kaptsevich Artillery Regiment, Cavalry Gladky and Amp Schladov Hussar Regiments Don and Amp Ural Cossacks Major General Manners 9th Brigade. The left centre column, commanded by Lieutenant General Sir James Pulteney, was composed of 2 squadrons 11th Light Dragoons, Major General George Don's 5th Brigade, Major General Ercout's 3rd Brigade. The right centre column, under Lieutenant General Dundas, consisted of 2 squadrons 11th Light Dragoons, Major General D'Oyly's 1st Guards Brigade, Major General Harry Burrard's 2nd Brigade, Major General H.R.H. Prince William's 8th Brigade. Battle plan and terrain. The British and Russian commanders noticed that the Republicans had left the right uncovered, and a very strong position unoccupied. This would have been difficult to correct if the attack on that flank had been vigorously carried out. They had also left Amsterdam undefended on the only side by which it was accessible. The plan of operations was as follows. The left column was to turn the enemy's right on the Zuiderzee, the right was to drive the enemy from the heights of Kamperduin, and to seize Bergen. The right centre had to force the position at Wormenhausen and Schuurdam, and to cooperate with the right column, while the left centre had to obtain possession of Oud-Kaspel on the main road leading to Alkmaar. The enemy's left was advantageously posted on the high sand hills which extend from the sea in front of Petten to the town of Bergen. The ground over which the centre columns had to move was intersected every 300 or 400 yards by broad, deep, wet ditches and canals. The bridges across the few roads leading to the points of attack were destroyed, and obstacles had been carefully arranged. Action. Contrary to all reasonable expectations, the force under Sir Ralph Abercrombie took no direct part in this action. Consequently, the Allied troops engaged amounted to no more than between 15,000 and 18,000 men. The corps under Sir Ralph Abercrombie began the march on the evening of the 18th of September, but his advance was delayed by the bad state of the roads, and he arrived at Horn many hours later than was expected. The objectives that would have been gained by this column would have had a material effect on the result of the whole expedition, and could only be attempted while the Duke of York possessed the superior force. The battle was commenced by Russian forces, which had by 8 a.m. September 19 obtained possession of Bergen. In vain did they expect support from the British allies, which had not even lined up for the battle, because the British and Russian commanders had neglected to synchronize the clocks. As a result, Russian forces were rapidly encircled by the French. Hermann was made prisoner and his second-in-command, Jerebsov, killed, while the troops were forced back through Bergen to Scuol, which they also had to abandon. This village was retaken by Major General Manner's brigade, which was then reinforced by 2 battalions of Russians, by Major General Orley's brigade of guards, and by the 35th Regiment under Prince William. The action was renewed by these troops, who in the turn repulsed the enemy, but a lack of ammunition and the exhausted state of the corps engaged in that part of the field obliged them to retire on Petin and Azijpur Canal. The column under Lieutenant General Dundas attacked the village of Warmenhausen at dawn, where the enemy, with a large force of artillery, was strongly positioned. 3 battalions of Russians, under Major General Sedmoratsky, moving from Krabendik, gallantly stormed the left of the village, with the 1st Regiment of Guards entering it on the right at the same time. The Grenadier Battalion of Guards, the 3rd Regiment of Guards and the 2nd Battalion 5th Regiment, which had been previously detached to march upon Square Dam to keep up the communication with Sir James Pulteney, were joined by the remainder of the column, which, after taking Warmenhausen, had been reinforced by the 1st Battalion 5th Regiment, and the whole moved forward and seized the village. They held it under artillery fire until the conclusion of the action. The left-center column, though opposed by the bulk of the Batavian army under General Daendels, had overcome all opposition and taken possession of Oudkerspel, thus securing the direct line of advance on Alkmaar. Sir Ralph Abercrombie had equally well accomplished his task by capturing the town of Horn, on the coast of the Zuiderzee, and placing himself in a favorable position for completing the turning movement. However, in consequence of the partial failure on the right, it was considered necessary to recall all the troops and reoccupy the former position. The strength of the column which attacked Bergen would have been more than sufficient if it had been employed correctly. This column was numerically superior to the enemy, but it moved in mass in an intersected country, did not cover its flanks, and its operations having, contrary to order, been commenced long before daylight. Its fire was probably more destructive to itself than to the enemy. That the other columns were not too weak for their tasks is shown by the having taken and held, until recall, the points against which they had been directed. Losses. The losses on both sides were considerable. British, 6 officers, 2 sergeants, 109 rank and file killed, 43 officers, 20 sergeants, 2 drummers, 345 rank and file wounded, 22 sergeants, 5 drummers, 463 rank and file missing. Russians 1,741 non-commissioned officers, rank and file, and 44 officers killed or captured. 1,225, including 49 officers, are wounded. Republicans, 3,000 prisoners, including 60 officers. 16 guns taken. Aftermath. The newly appointed Russian commander-in-chief Mikhail Kutuzov, who was rushing from St. Petersburg to assume command of Russian forces, learned about the debacle at Hamburg and, deeming the campaign to be doomed, promptly returned to Russia. The Republicans reoccupied all the positions from which they had been driven, and the general line of defense was now covered on the right by inundations, the only roads across which were covered by field works. The space between Alkmaar and the Zuiderzee was thus rendered defensible by small numbers, and Amsterdam was secured on the land side. The remainder of the army, which had been reinforced, was concentrated between the Langdijk and the sea, and the post of Oudkaspel was strengthened by additional works, and by inundations. Squerdam and Kodijk were also fortified. The next major engagement took place at Castricum on the 6th of October. Bibliography: Smith, Digby, The Napoleonic Wars Data Book. Greenhill, 1998. The above text is an extract from an article compiled by the British Army's Intelligence Branch of the Quartermaster General's Department in 1884. Flash map of the Battle of Bergen-Binnen. The 19th of September 1799. D. Milutin.